My son pretended to be broke to manipulate me. But when I showed up at his mansion disguised as a poor woman, he didn't know I had $3 million hidden away. If you've ever felt like your family used you as an ATM, stay with me. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I'd share. And if you, for just a second, feel like this sounds familiar, I just ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It will help me to keep unburdening my soul. My name is Grace Miller. I'm 68 years old, and I've lived my whole life in Chicago, in the Bridgeport neighborhood, where the magnolia trees paint the streets pink every spring, and the smell of fresh donuts drifts from the bakeries at dawn. For 43 years, I cleaned houses in the Gold Coast and Lincoln Park, those neighborhoods where the mansions have gardens bigger than my entire apartment. My hands, rough and marked by bleach and industrial detergents, know every corner of kitchens I could never afford, every type of imported marble that other women showed off while I polished it on my knees. My uniform was always the same: black pants, a white cotton blouse that I ironed myself on Sunday nights, and comfortable shoes with worn-out soles that I'd buy at the flea market in Pilsen. I wore my hair in a thick braid that fell down my back, gray since my 50s, which I never dyed because the cost of hair color was what I needed for a week's worth of groceries. I had 3 children: Robert, the oldest, who moved to Denver and became an accountant; Maria, who married a businessman from Dallas and only called me on Christmas to check a box; and Sam, my baby, my favorite, the one who was born when I was 30 and to whom I gave everything I couldn't give the other 2 because my finances were a little more stable by then. Sam got a business degree from UIC thanks to the overtime hours I worked on weekends. While his classmates were out partying in River North, I was in some Lincoln Park residence cleaning up after an elegant gathering, packing up the leftovers that the ladies would give me with an air of Christian charity to take home to my son, who studied late into the night in our small 2-bedroom apartment where the rumble of the L train echoed every 15 minutes. I paid for his degree. I bought him his first computer. I gave him the down payment for his first car, a used Honda that he showed off as if it were brand new. And when he met Jessica, that woman from Kenilworth with an air of superiority who came from money, I paid for half of their wedding at the Chicago Botanic Garden, though no one thanked me for it. In the photos, I'm barely visible in a corner, wearing my olive green dress, the only formal thing I owned, bought years earlier for my mother's funeral. That Wednesday in March, the characteristic gray sky of the season covered the city like a dirty blanket. I had just finished my shift at Mrs. Castell's house, a woman who lived on the Gold Coast, and treated me with the condescension of someone who thinks being polite to the help makes them a good person. My knees ached after scrubbing the kitchen floor, and I felt the accumulated exhaustion of decades in every vertebra of my spine. I took the CTA bus on Michigan Avenue heading home, squeezed between students with headphones and office workers staring at their phones, clinging to the metal pole as the bus lurched through the dense afternoon traffic. The smell of sweat, cheap perfume, and street cart hot dogs mingled in that shared space where we were all equals for 30 minutes, regardless of whether we came from cleaning houses or closing million-dollar deals. I arrived at my apartment, a second-floor walk-up accessed by a set of concrete stairs stained with dampness. The blue metal door creaked open, revealing the space where I had raised my 3 children. A small living room with a worn-out fabric sofa I'd bought secondhand 20 years ago, a wooden dining table with mismatched chairs I'd collected over time, a tiny galley kitchen where barely one person could fit, and 2 bedrooms that were once filled with the noise of children and now held only silence and my memories. I took off my shoes, feeling the immediate relief in my swollen feet, and sank into the sofa. I pulled out my old cell phone, a basic model Sam had given me 3 years ago, saying, "So, you're not disconnected, Mom," though I rarely used it because the internet confused me and the small letters hurt my tired eyes. I had a voicemail from Sam. My heart gave a little leap, as it always did when I saw his name on the screen. Despite everything, despite the months without seeing him, despite the calls growing more and more infrequent, he was still my baby. I pressed the play icon with a trembling index finger, bringing the phone to my ear. "Mom." His voice sounded tired, defeated, with that tone people use when they're on the verge of emotional collapse. "I don't know how to tell you this, but everything's fallen apart. The import business went bankrupt. My partners scammed me. I lost everything, Mom. Everything. A pause. I heard his ragged breath, almost a restrained sob. I had to sell the car. Jessica left me, took the kids to her mother's. The bank is going to foreclose on my condo in River North. I'm destroyed, Mom. I have nowhere to go. Another, longer pause. My hand started to shake. I need your help. I know I have no right to ask you for anything after so long without visiting, but you're the only person I can trust. I need you to help me get out of this. Please. I'll call you tomorrow. The message ended. I stared at the phone's dark screen, feeling my stomach churn. My son, my Sam, the boy I had carried in my arms through the streets of the Loop when we didn't even have money for the bus, was in trouble. All my maternal instincts flared to life. I had to help him. I had to save him. But something didn't add up. I listened to the message again, and then a third time, and a fourth. There was something in his voice, something in the way he pronounced certain words, a cadence that was too rehearsed, as if he were reading from a script instead of speaking from genuine pain. I knew my son. I knew every nuance of his voice since he was a baby crying in the middle of the night. And this sounded fake. I got up from the sofa with difficulty, my joints protesting after a full day of physical labor. I went to the kitchen and put water on to boil for chamomile tea, my nightly ritual, the moment when I could sit and think without the noise of the outside world. While I waited for the water to boil, I looked out the window to the street below. The hot dog carts on the corner were starting to fire up their grills. The man selling elotes was pushing his cart, blowing his distinctive whistle. The ladies were returning from the market with their shopping bags full. Daily life, routine, normalcy. But my world had just been shaken. I poured my tea into a chipped mug that had belonged to my mother, the steam rising in spirals that dissolved into the air. I sat back down on the sofa and closed my eyes, trying to remember the last time I had seen Sam. It had been 8 months ago, on his birthday. I had taken 2 buses to get to his condo in River North, carrying a casserole dish with his favorite pot roast, which I had started cooking at 5 in the morning. When I arrived, sweaty and tired, he barely opened the door wide enough for me to squeeze in. "Oh, Mom, you didn't have to come. We're busy," he'd said, glancing nervously over his shoulder. Inside, I heard laughter, music, the clinking of glasses. A party. His party. The one I wasn't invited to. I left the pot roast in the kitchen. He didn't even offer me a seat. "How much do I owe you for the ingredients?" he asked, pulling out his Italian leather wallet, as if I were a catering service instead of his mother. I told him it was nothing, that it was his gift. He put the wallet away, gave me a quick kiss on the cheek that smelled of expensive cologne, and walked me to the door in a hurry, as if my presence in his building might embarrass him in front of his friends in their designer suits and wine glasses. I walked down the building's stairs, each step feeling like a silent slap in the face. In the marble-floored lobby, I caught my reflection in the mirrors. An old, stooped woman in humble clothes, carrying a cloth market bag. I didn't belong in that world, and my son knew it. That night, I cried on the bus ride home, as the city lights blurred past the window. A woman sitting next to me offered me a tissue without saying a word. There are silent kindnesses between strangers that hurt more than the cruelties from your own flesh and blood. Now, 8 months later, Sam was calling me for help. Help for what? To save him from a ruin that was perhaps fabricated? To manipulate me as he had his entire adult life, taking my motherly love as a guarantee that I would always be there to bail him out. I drank my tea slowly, the warm liquid offering a moment of comfort, but the knot in my stomach wouldn't loosen. Because there was something Sam didn't know, something no one in my family knew. I stood up and went to my bedroom, a small space that barely fit my twin bed, and an old wooden wardrobe I'd inherited from my grandmother. I opened the wardrobe, and from the very back, behind my few hanging blouses and pants, I pulled out a tin box that had once held Danish cookies. The box was rusted at the corners, with a faded picture of a European Christmas scene I'd never visited. I opened it carefully. Inside were envelopes, folded papers, and bank documents I guarded with the zeal of someone protecting their only secret. I took out the most recent one, the statement for my investment fund. $3,400,000. The number still seemed unreal every time I read it, as if it belonged to someone else's life, not Grace Miller's, the woman who scrubbed floors and took the CTA bus. But it was real as the scars on my hands and the ache in my back. The story of that money began 25 years ago, when Vince, my husband, died. He had worked his whole life in construction, putting up skyscrapers he could never afford to live in. An accident on a job site in the Loop, a steel beam that fell in the wrong place, and my life partner was gone in seconds, leaving me a widow at 43 with 3 teenage children. The construction company paid me a settlement to avoid a lawsuit, $150,000. A fortune for us. Blood money, guilt money, money that smelled of death. Everyone advised me to spend it. Buy a house, start a business, live a little, Grace. But I was scared. Scared of losing the only thing Vince had left me besides his children. I went to the bank with my ignorance and my terror. A young banker looked at me condescendingly when I asked what I could do with the money. He probably thought I'd waste it on frivolous things, like most people of my social class who suddenly get money they don't know how to handle. But I just wanted to protect it. Can I put it somewhere where it will just grow, without me touching it? I asked, my voice trembling. He smiled, not with mockery, but with something like surprise, and told me about long-term investment funds. I didn't understand half of what he explained, but I grasped the essential part. If I didn't touch the money for many years, it would grow. I invested $140,000. I used the other $10,000 to pay off our debts, Vince's funeral, and to create an emergency fund that I kept in a separate account. And then, I did something no one expected. I forgot about the money. Literally. I kept working, kept cleaning houses, kept living on my modest salary. Once a year, I would go to the bank, update my information, and see how the number grew. But I never touched it. And every month, without fail, I took $100 from my salary and deposited it into that fund. $100 that hurt. That meant not buying new shoes or not going to the doctor when I was sick. But I did it religiously, like an economic prayer whose power I didn't fully understand. 25 years later, the miracle of compound interest had turned my sacrifice into a figure I had never imagined in my wildest dreams. A new financial advisor had contacted me 2 years ago, surprised that a client with my profile had such an old and successful portfolio. "Mrs. Miller, you are a case study," he had told me with genuine admiration. "Most people don't have this kind of discipline. You never touched the principal. That's extraordinary." I just nodded, not knowing whether to feel proud or foolish. Because what good had that money done me if I was still living in the same apartment, still cleaning houses, still taking the bus, squeezed between strangers? It was like having a treasure buried in the yard and starving to death in the house. But there was a reason I didn't touch it. A reason I was ashamed to admit even to myself. I was afraid my children would find out. Because if they knew, everything would change. I would no longer be their mother. I would be their inheritance. They would no longer come to see me out of love, but out of interest. And I preferred to live with the illusion that one day, one of them would come simply because they missed me. That illusion had been shattered over the years. Robert called me twice a year, always brief, always in a hurry. Maria sent me generic birthday texts without asking how I was. And Sam had been my last hope. The son who had gotten an education because of me, who had prospered because of my sacrifices. And now he was calling me with a desperate voice that my mother's intuition detected as fake. I put the papers back in the cookie tin and the tin back in the wardrobe. I looked at myself in the small mirror on the wall, a 68-year-old woman with deep wrinkles, age spots on her hands, her completely white hair pulled back in its eternal braid, an invisible woman, a woman the world saw as poor. And in that moment, as I looked at my reflection, I made a decision. If Sam was pretending, if he was testing me, if he was trying to manipulate my motherly love to get something out of me, then I was going to pretend too. I was going to give him a performance he would never forget. But first, I needed to confirm my suspicions. I needed to know if my son was truly ruined, or if it was all a cruel act to test me, to see how far he could squeeze me before I broke. I barely slept that night. I tossed and turned in my narrow bed, listening to the building's nighttime noises, the footsteps of the upstairs neighbor who worked nights, the distant barking of stray dogs, the constant hum of traffic that never ceased. Chicago, the city that never sleeps because it can't afford to. The next day, I called a former coworker, Beatrice, who had cleaned houses in the same neighborhood where Sam lived. I asked her for a favor I was ashamed to ask but needed to walk by my son's building and tell me what she saw. Beatrice knew me well enough not to ask questions. 2 hours later, my phone rang. "Grace? Your son is still there. I saw his car in the parking garage, the black BMW. It hasn't been repossessed, and I saw his wife and kids coming out. They looked fine, happy. They went into that fancy French bistro on the corner." I felt the blood freeze in my veins. The knot in my stomach tightened into something hard and painful, as if I had swallowed rocks. My son had lied. It was all a lie. The ruin, the desperation, the abandonment. All of it. Theater, manipulation. A cruel test to see if his mother was still useful for something, if she could still be squeezed a little more before being discarded for good. I hung up the phone and sat on the sofa, trembling, not with sadness, not with disappointment, but with a cold, calculated rage I had never felt before. A rage that came from a deep place where I had stored 43 years of silent humiliations, of contempt disguised as love, of being treated as a resource instead of a human being. And in that moment, I knew exactly what I was going to do. Over the next 3 days, Sam called me 4 more times. Each voicemail was a masterpiece of emotional manipulation. His voice grew progressively more broken, more desperate, more on the edge. "Mom, please answer me," he'd say with a practiced sob. "I need to know you're there. You're all I have left in this world." I didn't answer. I let the messages pile up on my phone like evidence of his cruelty. Each one was a knife twisting deeper, but I was no longer bleeding. I had turned to stone, to ice, to something harder than pain. On the 4th day, I finally replied with a short text message, using the large font my phone allowed because my tired eyes struggled with the small letters. "Son, give me a few days. I'm seeing what I can do for you. Your loving mother." His reply came in seconds. "Thanks, Mom. I knew I could count on you. I love you." 3 words that once would have filled my heart. Now they just made me sick. That afternoon, I went to the Maxwell Street Market, where the streets smell of commerce, and the rules are different from the rest of the city. I'd known the place since I was a girl, when I'd go with my mother to buy cheap fabric and kitchenware. The market has a rough reputation, but it also has its own dignity, its own code of honor among those who survive on the margins. I looked for a used clothing stall I remembered from years ago. The woman who ran it, Ms. Sheila, must have been over 70, but she was still there, among mountains of clothes piled on rickety wooden tables. She recognized me immediately. "Gracie? Haven't seen you in years, girl. What brings you here?" I explained what I needed. Clothes that would make me look poorer than I already did. More neglected. More defeated. Ms. Sheila didn't ask questions. She looked me in the eye with the wisdom of someone who has lived long enough to understand that sometimes people need to disguise themselves in their own misery. She sold me a faded gray dress, 2 sizes too big, that hung on my body like a formless sack. A brown cardigan with holes in the elbows and frayed edges. An old polyester scarf with a floral print that had gone out of style 30 years ago. And shoes, a pair of cracked synthetic leather loafers with soles that were almost detached and squeaked when I walked. "For a play?" Ms. Sheila asked as she wrapped everything in a black bag. "Something like that," I replied. "For a performance where I have to play someone who's lost everything." She nodded slowly, folding each garment with care. "Well, you seem like the type who knows how to act, Gracie. We've been acting our whole lives, haven't we? Acting like it doesn't hurt, like we're not tired, like everything's fine when we're dying on the inside." Her words hit me with an uncomfortable truth. I paid and left, carrying my bag of costumes to the next stop. I needed an old suitcase, the kind people used to use back when travel was a luxury and poor families stored their belongings in borrowed or inherited luggage. I found one at the market. A rigid brown suitcase, scratched and dented, with faded labels from hotels that no longer existed. It was perfect. It looked like it contained a lifetime of disappointments. I returned home as the sun began to set, tinting the sky orange and pink over the city's gray chaos. I climbed the stairs to my apartment, feeling the weight of the bag and the suitcase. But more than that, feeling the weight of what I was about to do. That night, I tried on the full costume in front of the mirror. The dress was baggy, hiding my figure and making me look more fragile than I was. The cardigan with holes added a touch of neglect, as if I no longer cared about my appearance. The scarf partially covered my white hair, tied carelessly under my chin. The battered shoes completed the image. A woman beaten down by life. I looked at myself for a long time. It was me, but it wasn't me. It was the version of myself that my children probably saw when they thought of their mother. A worn-out woman, worthless, useful only when they needed something. A shadow, an exhaustible resource. I felt a mixture of sadness and determination. If that's what they wanted to see, that's what I would give them. But with a twist they would never expect. The next day, I sent a message to Sam. "Son, I'm going to come see you. I need to talk to you in person. Tell me when I can come by." His response was immediate, almost desperate in its speed. "Mom, come today, please, at 6 o'clock. I need you." I spent the rest of the day preparing. Not physically, but mentally. I replayed every humiliation, every slight, every moment I had been treated as less than human by the people I had brought into the world. Those memories didn't weaken me. They strengthened me. They became my armor. At 5 o'clock, I put on the costume. Before leaving, I went to the wardrobe and took out the cookie tin. From the documents inside, I chose the most important one, the most recent bank statement from my investment fund. I folded it carefully and tucked it into an old cloth bag I put inside the suitcase, along with a few wrinkled clothes for effect. I took the L train from 35th Archer. The car was packed, as always at that hour when the entire city moves like a giant, tired organism. I clung to the metal pole, swaying with the train's movement, my old suitcase between my legs. People glanced at me with the typical indifference of public transit, where everyone is too absorbed in their own exhaustion to notice anyone else's. Some people, however, looked at me with something resembling pity. A young student offered me her seat. "Here, ma'am, you look tired." I declined with a gentle wave. I needed to stay in character, but I also needed to feel the real physical fatigue that would complement my performance. I got off at the Merchandise Mart station and walked the 6 blocks to Sam's building in River North, that trendy neighborhood where hipsters drank specialty coffee, and the rents were higher than the monthly salary of 3 working-class families combined. The leafy trees cast pleasant shadows on the clean sidewalks. The Art Deco facades of the buildings spoke of an elegant past reinvented as an exclusive present. Sam's building was one of those, 7 floors of concrete and glass, with a minimalist lobby where a uniformed doorman guarded the entrance. I knew him from my previous visits. His name was Mr. Henderson, and he had always been kind to me, unlike my son. When I approached, dragging my old suitcase, Mr. Henderson looked at me with surprise and a bit of confusion. It took him a few seconds to recognize me under my disguise. "Mrs. Miller? Is that you?" I nodded with feigned exhaustion, hunching my shoulders a little more. "I'm here to see my son, Mr. Henderson. Sam is expecting me." He looked at my appearance with genuine concern. "Are you all right, ma'am? Do you need help with the suitcase?" "I'm fine, thank you. Just tired. You know how life is, Mr. Henderson opened the door for me with an expression that mixed compassion with something else, secondhand embarrassment, as if he knew something was wrong in the relationship between mother and son, but had no authority to intervene. I took the elevator to the 5th floor. The hallway walls were decorated with modern art I didn't understand, splashes of color that cost more than years of my labor. The door to apartment 502 was in front of me, pearl gray paint, a gold number. I rang the bell. I heard hurried footsteps. The door opened, and there was Sam, my son, tall, handsome, his hair styled with gel and his beard perfectly trimmed. He was wearing designer jeans and a white linen shirt that I recognized as expensive just from the way the fabric draped. His expression when he saw me was revealing. First confusion, then recognition, and then something that broke my heart. Satisfaction. A small smile at the corner of his lips that he tried to hide quickly, but I saw it. The smile of someone confirming their plan is working. Mom, my God, what happened to you? Come in quick. He pulled me by the arm with an urgency born not of concern, but of shame. He didn't want the neighbors to see me. He rushed me inside and shut the door with a sharp click that sounded like a final judgment. The apartment was exactly as I remembered. Spacious, bright, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the tree-lined street. Designer furniture, a gourmet kitchen with stainless steel appliances, hardwood floors, a huge television on the wall. On the coffee table, a bottle of red wine and 2 half-full glasses. There were no signs of ruin anywhere. None. On the contrary, on the dining table, I saw travel brochures. Cancun, Cabo, all-inclusive luxury resort packages. Next to the brochures was a brand-new iPad that hadn't even been put away, as if it were so common it wasn't worth hiding. My heart was pounding, but I maintained my expression of exhaustion, of defeat, of a mother desperate to help her disgraced son. "Sit down, Mom," Sam said, gesturing to the Italian leather sofa. But his voice had the tone you use with someone you don't want to stay for long. "Do you want some water? Tea?" "A little water, son." "Thank you." My voice came out trembling, weak, perfect. He went to the kitchen and came back with a paper cup of water from the dispenser. He didn't even bother to use one of the crystal glasses from his cabinet. That small detail told me everything. I sat on the edge of the sofa, as if I didn't feel worthy of sinking into its expensive cushions. I drank the water slowly, observing. Sam paced the living room, hands in his pockets, nervous. But it wasn't the anxiety of someone in crisis. It was the impatience of someone waiting for a plan to come together. "Mom, thanks for coming. I know it's been hard on you too, with your job and everything." His voice was syrupy, condescending. He spoke to me like you would a small child or someone with diminished capacity. "That's why I didn't want to bother you, but I'm really up against a wall." He sat in the armchair across from me, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees in a pose he'd probably seen in a movie about men in crisis. Everything about him was an act. The import business. It was a disaster. I invested everything, Mom. Everything. And my partners, those crooks, they robbed me. They took the money and left me with the debts. He paused dramatically, running a hand through his hair in a gesture of studied desperation. "Jessica left me. She took the kids. Says she doesn't want to be with a failure anymore." Every word was such a perfect lie that for a moment I almost admired his acting talent. If I hadn't known the truth, if I hadn't sent Beatrice to check, if I hadn't seen the vacation brochures and the expensive wine on the table, I might have believed him. "And the condo, son?" I asked in a weak voice. "You said they were going to take it." "Yeah, Mom. The bank gave me an ultimatum. I have 2 months to pay what I owe, or they'll foreclose. It's $25,000 in arrears." He looked me straight in the eye, searching for my reaction. "I need your help, Mom. I know you don't have much, but do you have any savings? Anything put away? Anything would help. I'll pay you back, I swear. When I get out of this, I'll pay you back with interest." $25,000. A carefully calculated figure. High enough to be significant, but not so high as to seem impossible for a woman who had worked her whole life. He probably figured I had something saved from his father's insurance, something I had guarded all these years for an emergency. He wasn't entirely wrong, but his calculations were very, very short. I lowered my gaze, letting the silence stretch between us. I heard the ticking of the minimalist wall clock that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I heard the hum of the stainless steel refrigerator. I heard my own breathing, measured, controlled. "Son," I began, my voice cracking. I did have something saved. From your father's insurance. It was for my old age, for when I can't work anymore." I paused, as if it were hard to continue. "It's about $15,000. It's everything I have in the world." I saw his eyes light up. 15,000. It wasn't everything he'd asked for, but it was a juicy amount for someone who thought his mother was a poor cleaning lady with nothing but her worn-out hands. "Mom, you'd do that for me?" he asked, and he had the nerve to let his eyes get slightly misty. "You'd really give me your life savings? You don't know what this means to me. You're the best mom in the world." The best mom in the world. Those words would have melted me years ago. Now they just made me feel sick. But son, I continued, maintaining my trembling tone, if I give you that money, I'll have nothing left. I'm already 68. My knees can't take it like they used to. I don't know how much longer I can keep working. I let a real tear slide down my cheek. It wasn't difficult. The sadness I felt was genuine, though not for the reasons he thought. What will happen to me? Sam got up and came to sit next to me on the sofa. He took my hand, that rough, stained hand that had washed his dirty clothes as a child, that had cooked his favorite meals, that had worked until it bled to give him an education. Mom, listen to me, he said in a soft, hypnotic voice. When I get out of this, I'm going to take care of you. I promise. You won't have to work anymore. You'll come live here with me. I'll give you everything you deserve. But I need you to trust me now. I need you to help me get back on my feet, and then I'll lift you up, okay? We're family. Family helps each other. Family helps each other. How convenient to remember that now that he needed something from me. Where was that philosophy on my forgotten birthdays? On my unanswered calls? In the 8 months since he'd last allowed me in his home? And what if I can't give you everything? I asked, playing my part. What if I can only give you the $15,000? Will it be enough to save you? I saw frustration flash across his face before he could hide it. No, it wasn't enough. He wanted more. They always wanted more. Well, Mom, with that, I can negotiate with the bank. Maybe they'll give me more time if I make a significant payment. He squeezed my hand tighter. But you don't have anything else? The house? You could take out a second mortgage. Between that and your savings, we could... There it was. The real goal. He didn't just want my savings. He wanted my house. He wanted me to risk the only roof over my head to save him from a ruin that didn't even exist. I felt something inside me harden even more, like metal being tempered in fire. But I kept my expression of a mother torn by a difficult decision. I don't know, son. That's a big risk. What if you can't pay? Where will I live? Here, Mom. I already told you. You'll live here with me. His smile was wolfish. We'll be together the way it should be, a united family. Just then, the master bedroom door opened. Jessica appeared, his wife. The woman who had supposedly left him, taken the children, who didn't want to be with a failure. She was perfectly put together, in designer jeans and a silk blouse. Her makeup was flawless. She didn't look like a woman in a marital crisis. When she saw me, her expression was one of unpleasant surprise, as if she'd found a bug in her kitchen. She tried to cover it quickly. Oh, Grace, what a surprise, she said with a forced sweetness. She came closer but didn't greet me with a kiss, just a vague wave of her hand. Sam didn't tell me you were coming. Mom came to help us with the crisis, Sam said quickly, shooting his wife a warning look. A look that clearly said, play along. Oh, right, the crisis. Jessica tried to look distressed. It's been terrible, Grace. Just terrible. The kids are, well, they're with my mother now. We didn't want them to see their father like this. So down. Liar. Beatrice had told me she'd seen them leaving the building with her, happy and content, headed straight for an expensive restaurant. But I nodded with understanding, wiping away another tear that rolled authentically down my wrinkled cheek. I understand, dear. The children shouldn't have to suffer. Jessica's eyes fell on the old suitcase I'd left by the door. I could almost see her mind calculating, wondering if I had brought the cash inside it. Greed glittered in her eyes like gold coins. Do you want to stay for dinner, Grace? She asked, with no sincerity in her voice. It was pure formality, hoping I'd say no. I don't want to be a bother, I replied humbly. I just came to talk to Sam, to see how I can help. You're a saint, mother-in-law, Jessica said, and the word saint sounded like an insult coming from her. Not all mothers would do what you're willing to do. No, not all mothers would be so foolish. That's what she really meant to say. Sam stood up, walked to a bar cart in the corner of the room, and pulled out a folder. He brought it to me as if it were a gift. Look, Mom, here are the papers from the bank. It's all ready. You just need to sign here for the mortgage on your house and here to authorize the transfer of your savings to my account. He opened the folder in front of me with the efficiency of someone who had prepared everything in advance. Too much anticipation for someone supposedly desperate. The documents were perfectly organized, with yellow sticky flags on the signature lines. All calculated. All planned. This hadn't been improvised after my call. This had been weeks, maybe months, in the making. I took the papers with trembling hands. I stared at them without really reading, as if the print was too small for my tired eyes, which was partly true. Son, these papers are so complicated. I don't really understand what they say. Are you asking me to sign without understanding? Mom, trust me. I'm your son. When have I ever let you down? His voice had a barely contained edge of impatience. It's all in order. The lawyer already reviewed it. I just need you to trust me. When have I ever let you down? The question hung in the air like an insult. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream at him. You've let me down every single day for the last 10 years. You've let me down every time you didn't answer my calls. You've let me down every birthday you forgot. You've let me down every time you treated me like your servant instead of your mother. But I said nothing. I just let the papers tremble in my hands. Give me a few days, son. I need to go to the bank, do the paperwork. It's not something I can do just like that. My voice was small, frightened. Maybe a week. Can you wait a week? I saw the real frustration on his face this time. A week was too long. The desperate always rush, afraid their victim will have time to think twice. Mom, I don't have a week. The bank is giving me until Friday. That's only 3 days. He knelt in front of me, taking my hands in his. His hands were soft. No calluses, no marks of hard work. Please, do it for me. Do it for your son who needs you. Jessica chimed in from where she stood, leaning against the wall with her arms crossed. Grace, if you don't act fast, Sam could go to jail for the debts. Do you want your son to go to prison? Do you want your grandchildren to grow up knowing their father is locked up because their grandmother wouldn't help? Emotional blackmail in its purest, cruelest form. Using the children. Using fear. Using guilt. I closed my eyes, squeezing them shut, letting more tears fall. These were real. Tears of contained rage, of deep disappointment, of a mother's love twisted into something unrecognizable and painful. All right, I whispered finally. All right, I'll do it. But I need to get my money from the bank. It's in an account that requires me to go in person. I can't do it over the phone. Sam smiled. A victorious smile he tried to hide behind a mask of relief. Thank you, Mom. Thank you. You don't know what this means to me. We'll go to the bank together tomorrow morning, okay? First thing, so you can do the transfer and get it all sorted out. He wanted to come with me. Of course. He couldn't risk me changing my mind or some bank teller warning me about the fraud I was about to commit against myself. No, son. I'd rather go alone. I'm embarrassed for you to see how I live, how I've lived. I bowed my head in feigned humiliation. Give me 2 days. On Friday morning, I'll bring you the money. All of it. The savings and whatever I can get from the mortgage. I saw the doubt in his eyes. He didn't want to let me go without being sure. But he also couldn't push too hard without breaking the illusion of the concerned son. You promise, Mom? You promise you'll be back on Friday? I looked at him directly, letting him see my mother's love mixed with my supposed desperation to please him. I promise you, son. The world could end, and I would be here on Friday with your money. That promise convinced him. He hugged me, and for a second, just 1 second, I felt my son's body against mine and remembered when he was little, when he would hug me with genuine love, when I was his hero instead of his financial resource. The memory hurt more than anything else. They walked me to the door. Jessica kept her distance, as if my poverty were contagious. Sam carried my old suitcase to the elevator with a feigned solicitude that would have fooled me if I were as foolish as they thought. Take care, Mom. And thank you. Really. You're the best mother anyone could ask for. The elevator doors closed between us. I watched his face until it disappeared behind the sliding metal. My son. My blood. My greatest disappointment. I went down to the lobby where Mr. Henderson was waiting with a worried expression. He helped me with the suitcase to the street without a word, but before I walked away, he stopped me with a gentle touch on my arm. Mrs. Miller, forgive me for meddling, but be careful. I've seen a lot of people come through this building, and I've learned to recognize when someone is being used. His old eyes, tired like mine, looked at me with understanding. Not all family is family, you understand? I nodded, squeezing his hand gratefully. I understand, Mr. Henderson. More than you can imagine. The journey home was long. I didn't take the train right away. I walked through River North, watching the brightly lit cafes, the young couples laughing on patios, the purebred dogs walking with their well-dressed owners. A world parallel to my own. A world my son lived in while he lied to me about his ruin. When I finally got to my apartment, it was almost 10 at night. I took off the costume with slow movements, folding each piece carefully. I would need them again. The performance wasn't over yet. I made myself a cup of herbal tea to calm my nerves. I sat on my worn sofa in my small living room, surrounded by my few possessions that were worth more to me than all of Sam's designer furniture, because they were honest. They were real. They weren't built on lies and manipulation. I took out my old phone and dialed a number I had saved for 2 years. The number of a lawyer from a women's foundation who had helped a neighbor when her son tried to take her house. He answered on the third ring. Mr. Hernandez, good evening. Sorry for the late hour. My name is Grace Miller. You gave me your card 2 years ago when you helped my neighbor, Martha. I need legal advice. It's urgent. We spoke for almost an hour. I told him everything. Sam's message, the investigation I'd done, the visit to his condo, the papers he wanted me to sign. The lawyer listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes. When I finished, he sighed deeply. Mrs. Miller, what your son is attempting to do is fraud. If you had signed those papers under duress and deception, we could have taken legal action, but I understand you have other plans. There was a pause. What exactly is it you want to do? I want to teach him a lesson he will never forget. I want him to know his mother was not the fool he thought she was. And I want to protect my assets from all my children, because if Sam thought of this, the other two don't deserve my trust either. I understand. Then we need to draft some new documents. Immediately. Can you come to my office first thing tomorrow morning? We're going to make some legal changes that will completely alter the landscape of this situation. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. Not from peace, but from purpose. I had a plan, and in 2 days, that plan would be executed before my son's eyes, revealing who had really been acting and who had been genuine. Thursday morning, I went to Mr. Hernandez's office in the West Loop, an old building converted into professional offices with original mosaic floors and thick walls that had survived fires and fortunes. I liked the solidity of the place. It seemed fitting for what I was about to do. We spent 3 hours reviewing documents. The lawyer was a man in his 50s, serious but kind, who treated my concerns with the respect my own children had never given me. Mrs. Miller, these are the documents to change the beneficiaries of your investment fund. Your children will no longer inherit directly. The money will go into a trust that you control, and it will only be distributed under very specific conditions that you dictate. If those conditions are not met, the money goes entirely to a foundation for elderly women in need. And the house? The house will be registered with a protection clause. No one can force you to sell or mortgage it without your explicit consent before a notary, with independent witnesses. And it's protected from any attempt of seizure for third-party debts, including those of family members. I signed each document with a steady hand. Each signature was an act of liberation. Each one was a declaration of independence. The lawyer made certified copies of everything and handed me a new, elegant, black leather-bound folder. Here are all your original documents and the copies. On Friday, when you see your son, I recommend you bring this folder. And I recommend something else, Mrs. Miller. He looked at me seriously. Bring witnesses. Record the conversation on your phone if possible. What you're doing is completely legal, but it's always better to have evidence of everything in case any complications arise later. Witnesses? I don't have anyone. I can go with you. No extra charge. Consider it part of my commitment to justice. He smiled slightly. And believe me, I have waited a long time to see an abusive son get what he deserves. I accepted his offer gratefully. I left his office feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Power. Not the power of money, though I had it, but the power of decision. The power to say enough. The power to cut ties that were choking me while disguised as filial love. That Thursday afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in decades. I went to a department store on State Street, not a fancy one, but one where they sold new, dignified, good quality clothes. I tried on several outfits until I found the perfect one. A dark gray pantsuit, sober yet elegant. A crisp white cotton blouse. Black, closed-toe shoes, comfortable but professional. The saleswoman, a young woman in her 30s, watched me with curiosity as I tried on the clothes. When I came out of the dressing room in the suit, she stared in surprise. "Ma'am, you look wonderful. Very different. Is it for something special?" "Yes," I replied, looking at myself in the mirror. I almost didn't recognize myself. I looked like someone else. Someone with authority, with dignity. It's for the most important meeting of my life. That night, I rehearsed in front of the mirror. I practiced my posture. Back straight, shoulders back, chin up. I practiced my voice. Firm, clear, without a tremor. I practiced my gaze. Direct, without looking down. For 68 years, I had lived hunched under the weight of being less. Tomorrow, I would stand up straight. Friday dawned with a clear sky, unusual for Chicago at that time of year. I took it as a sign. I got ready with care. I showered, dried my hair, and instead of my usual braid, I let it fall loose on my shoulders. My white hair, which I had always hidden as if it were a shame, I now wore with pride. It was evidence of my years, my experience, my survival. I put on the new suit. I applied a little makeup, a bit of powder, a touch of pale pink lipstick. Nothing exaggerated, just enough to look polished. I put on a pair of silver earrings my mother had given me that I almost never wore. I looked in the mirror and saw a woman who had been hidden beneath decades of self-imposed servitude. At 9 o'clock, Mr. Hernandez knocked on my door. He was dressed in a navy blue suit, briefcase in hand, with the seriousness of someone going into a legal battle. "Good morning, Mrs. Miller. Are you ready?" "I'm ready," I replied, and my voice sounded firmer than it had in years. We took an Uber to River North. The lawyer insisted on paying. During the ride, we went over the plan one more time. He would remain silent unless it was absolutely necessary for him to intervene. This was my moment. My confrontation. My liberation. We arrived at Sam's building at 9:45. Mr. Henderson almost didn't recognize me when I walked in. His eyes widened in surprise when he saw me. "Mrs. Miller? My goodness, you look different. Very nice." "Thank you, Mr. Henderson. I have a meeting with my son. Mr. Hernandez is accompanying me." Mr. Henderson looked at the lawyer, then back at me, and a slow smile spread across his face. He understood. Not everything, but enough. "I hope it goes very well for you, ma'am. Very well." And the emphasis on those last words gave me additional strength. We went up to the 5th floor. The lawyer walked beside me, his presence solid and reassuring. I rang the bell for apartment 502. Sam opened it almost immediately, as if he had been waiting by the door. He was in sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair unkempt, as if he had just woken up. The performance of the broken man continued. "Mom, your ear—" He stopped short when he saw me. His expression shifted from surprise to confusion. "Mom? What?" Then he saw the lawyer. "Who is this?" "Good morning, Sam. This is Mr. Hernandez, my attorney. May we come in?" The word attorney landed like a bomb. I saw the color drain from Sam's face, saw his jaw clench. But he recovered quickly, forcing a confused smile. "Attorney? Mom, you don't need an attorney. We're family. What's going on?" He looked at the lawyer with barely disguised mistrust. "Who are you?" "Roberto Hernandez, attorney at law, specializing in family law and asset protection." "Good morning, young man." His tone was cordial, but professional, not friendly at all. We entered. Jessica came out of the bedroom, also in casual clothes. When she saw me, her face mirrored the same shock as Sam's. I, the poor, defeated mother-in-law, was standing in her living room dressed like someone who commanded respect. "What is going on here?" Jessica asked defensively. "Let's all sit down," I said, my voice calm but firm. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a command. We sat down in the living room. Sam and Jessica sat on the sofa, united in their confusion and growing alarm. Mr. Hernandez and I sat in the individual armchairs, positioned so we had the visual advantage. I took my old phone out of my purse and placed it on the coffee table, the recorder already active. Sam eyed the phone suspiciously. "Are you recording us, Mom?" "Yes, for the legal protection of all parties. Is there a problem with that?" My tone did not invite debate. Sam looked at Jessica. She shrugged, nervous. He looked back at me, trying to regain control of the situation. "Mom, I don't understand what's happening. You said you were going to bring the money. Did you bring it? Let's talk about a few things first, son. For example, your financial crisis." I pulled out my phone and found the photos Beatrice had sent me. Photos of his BMW parked in the building's garage. Photos of him, Jessica, and the children walking into the fancy French restaurant. These photos are from last Tuesday. Curiously, the same day you left me that very desperate voicemail about being ruined. The color drained completely from Sam's face. Jessica went rigid. I can explain that, Mom. The car is a loaner. The restaurant it was a last-ditch effort to— No, I interrupted, and my voice was like steel. No more lies. No more manipulation. No more theatrics. I took the folder Mr. Hernandez had given me from my bag. I came to tell you some truths you should have known a long time ago. I opened the folder and took out the first document, the statement from my investment fund. I placed it on the coffee table, the final number visible, $3,400,000. The silence that followed was absolute. Sam picked up the paper with trembling hands. He read it. He reread it. He looked at the bank's letterhead, the date, the figures. Jessica leaned over to see, and her mouth formed a perfect O of shock. $3.4 million? Sam whispered. You have $3.4 million? I did, I corrected. Until yesterday morning, when I changed all the beneficiaries and the legal structure of my entire estate. I pulled out the next document, the notarized articles of the trust. Sam read it with growing horror. A trust? A foundation? Mom, what did you do? What I should have done years ago. Protect myself from my own family. I leaned forward, looking him directly in the eye. You thought you could manipulate me, that you could fake a crisis to test me, to see if your foolish mother would give you her last few dollars while you lived in luxury. You thought I was so stupid that I wouldn't notice. Mom, I didn't— Sam tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Jessica remained motionless, paralyzed by the magnitude of what she was discovering. Be quiet, I said with a serenity that surprised me. For 68 years, I have listened. Today, you will listen. I took another document from the folder. You see this? This is the will I signed yesterday. Neither you, nor Robert, nor Maria will receive a single penny of my inheritance unless you meet very specific conditions. What conditions? Sam asked, his voice strangled. First condition, for the next 5 years you will visit me at least once a month. No calls. In-person visits. With the grandchildren. Second condition, you will contribute financially to my upkeep, proportional to your own incomes, just as I contributed to yours for decades. Third condition, you will prove with actions, not words, that you value me as a mother and not as a source of money. Jessica exploded. This is ridiculous. You can't put conditions on us like this. We're your family. I turned to her with a look that made her shrink back into the sofa. Family? Like when Sam pretended to be broke to manipulate me? Like when you two planned to steal my savings and my house? Like when you treated me like trash on my last visit 8 months ago? Is that the kind of family you mean? Mom, please, understand. Sam tried to approach me. I held up a hand, stopping him. Don't touch me. You have no right to touch me after what you tried to do. My voice broke slightly, but I held firm. I gave you everything. Everything I had. I worked until my hands bled so you could have an education. I scrubbed floors so you could have a profession. I used your father's insurance money, blood money, to invest for my children's future. And you just saw an opportunity to exploit me one more time. Tears began to roll down my cheeks, but this time I didn't hide them. They were tears of liberation, not shame. For 25 years I kept that secret, I continued. Do you know why? Because I was afraid that if you knew I had money, you would stop seeing me as your mother and only see me as your inheritance. And I was right. Look what you did the moment you thought I had something you could take. Sam sank back against the sofa, his hands covering his face. Jessica stared at the documents scattered on the table as if they were poisonous snakes. The money you thought you were going to steal from me, I continued, pulling out more papers, is now in an irrevocable trust. 70% will go to the New Hope Foundation, which helps elderly women who are mistreated by their families. The remaining 30% will be divided among my 3 children if, and only if, they meet the conditions of the will for 5 consecutive years. If any of you fail, your share also goes to the foundation. That's $1 million each, Jessica calculated quickly, her mind still working in terms of money. If they meet the conditions. If you meet them, I confirmed. But I have to tell you something. I don't think you can. Because you don't love me. You see me as an investment. And investments don't deserve respect, only returns. Sam finally spoke, his voice broken. Mom, I do love you. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But I love you. Let me prove it. Prove it? Like when you left me at the door of your birthday party after I'd spent hours cooking your favorite pot roast. Like when you didn't answer my calls for months. Like when you asked me to sign papers without reading them to steal my house. I shook my head. Love isn't proven when there are $3 million on the table, Sam. Love is proven when there is nothing to gain. Mr. Hernandez spoke for the first time. Mrs. Miller has every legal right to dispose of her assets as she sees fit. The documents are in order. Everything was executed with full mental capacity, with witnesses, and before a notary. There is nothing you can do legally to reverse these decisions. Jessica stood up abruptly. This is insane. You're a manipulative old woman using money to control your children. I looked at her without blinking. Manipulative? I wasn't the one who faked a crisis. I wasn't the one who prepared fraudulent documents. I wasn't the one who tried to steal her mother's house. I am simply protecting what is mine from people who proved they don't deserve it. Sam stood up, trembling with contained rage. If this is what you want, Mom, fine. Keep your money. We don't need you. We never needed you. Those words, designed to hurt me, had the opposite effect. They freed me, because they confirmed what I already knew. To him, I had only been useful as long as I could be exploited. I stood up, gathering my folder and my purse. Mr. Hernandez did the same. I walked to the door, but before leaving, I turned back one last time. You're right, Sam. You never needed me. You needed my money, my work, my sacrifice, but never me. And now, finally, we're being honest with each other. I paused. The children, Matthew and Sophie. Tell them their grandmother loves them. Tell them that if one day, when they're older, they want to meet the real woman I am, and not the version you'll tell them about, I'll be waiting. But you and her, I pointed at Jessica, I don't want to see either of you again unless it's under the conditions of the will. Then go, get out and don't come back, Jessica screamed. Gladly, I replied, and I walked out of the apartment with my head held high, followed by Mr. Hernandez. In the elevator, as we descended, the lawyer looked at me with something akin to admiration. Mrs. Miller, that was extraordinary. Few people have the courage to do what you just did. It wasn't courage, I answered honestly. It was survival. If I hadn't cut that tie, it would have drowned me. We emerged into the lobby. Mr. Henderson was waiting with a huge smile. How did it go, ma'am? Very well, Mr. Henderson. Very well. I gave him a hug that surprised him. Thank you for your kindness. I will always remember it. We walked out onto the street. The midday sun bathed River North in golden light. The trees swayed in the breeze. Life went on, indifferent to the small, personal revolutions happening in apartments and in hearts. Mr. Hernandez insisted on buying me lunch. We went to a modest but clean diner in the West Loop, a place where office workers shared tables and conversation. I felt more comfortable there than in any fancy restaurant. What will you do now, Mrs. Miller? He asked as we waited for our food. Live, I replied simply. For the first time in decades, I'm going to live for myself. I took out my phone and showed him something I had been secretly researching for weeks. Look at this. It's a volunteer program in Santa Fe, New Mexico. They teach elderly women in rural communities how to read and write. They need volunteers who can stay for 3 months. I thought I'd apply. 3 months in Santa Fe? What about your cleaning job? I smiled. I quit yesterday. After 43 years, I gave my notice. My boss couldn't believe it. I told her I'd won a small amount in the lottery and wanted to retire. She was happy for me. I took a sip of water. It wasn't a total lie. I won something better than the lottery. I won my freedom. And your apartment? I'm keeping it. It's my home base. But I'm going to travel. See the places I always dreamed of but put on hold for my children. I'm going to take painting classes. I always wanted to paint. I'm going to read all the books I never had time for. I am going to live the years I have left how I choose, not how others expect me to. The lawyer raised his glass of soda in a toast. To your new life, Mrs. Miller. To your courage. And to being an example for all the mothers who are being silently exploited. We toasted. And in that moment, in that simple diner, surrounded by the clatter of plates and conversation, I felt richer than ever. Not because of the millions in the bank, but because I finally belonged to myself. 6 months later, I was sitting on the patio of an adobe house in Chimayo, New Mexico, surrounded by 10 women between the ages of 50 and 70. The afternoon sun painted the Sangre de Cristo Mountains purple and gold. In my hands, I held a notebook where Maria, a 62-year-old Pueblo woman, had just written her first complete sentence, "I am strong." When she read those 3 words aloud, her eyes filled with tears. The other women applauded. I cried too, because I understood exactly what it meant to discover your own strength after decades of not knowing you had it. Teacher Grace, they called me, though I insisted I was just another woman learning alongside them. I taught them to read and write, but they taught me about medicinal plants, about weaving on traditional looms, about cooking with green chilies, about living with dignity even when the world tells you you are worthless because you are old, because you are a woman, because you are poor. I lived in a small room I rented in the house of Doña Jacinta, a potter whose hands created magic with the local clay. In the mornings, before classes, I would sit on the patio with an easel and paint. My first attempts had been clumsy, childlike. But over time, something inside me began to flow onto the canvas. I painted hands. Always hands. Working hands. Wrinkled hands. Hands that told stories of sacrifice and resilience. A small gallery in downtown Santa Fe had asked to exhibit some of my paintings. They have soul, the owner, a young man with round glasses and a genuine passion for art, had told me. You can tell these hands have known work. I didn't tell him the hands I painted were my own, seen through decades of mirrors and memories. My phone would ring occasionally. Robert, my oldest son, had called me twice in those 6 months. Awkward, forced conversations where he asked how I was, and I answered with politeness, but without warmth. He had not yet come to visit. The conditions of the will required in-person visits, not phone calls. The clock was ticking. Maria had sent me angry text messages at first, when she found out from Sam about the changes to my will. How could you do this to us? We're your children, she wrote. I didn't reply for 3 weeks. Finally, I wrote back, I am your mother, not your inheritance. If you want a relationship with me, let's build it on love, not on the expectation of future money. She didn't write back. Sam, surprisingly, was the one who tried to contact me the most. Calls I didn't answer. Messages I read but didn't reply to. Until one day, 3 months after our last conversation, I received a different kind of message. Mom, Matthew is asking about you. He says he misses his grandma. Can I bring him to see you wherever you are? Just him. No Jessica. No conditions. I just want you to see your grandson. That message broke me in ways the previous manipulations never could. Matthew. My 7-year-old grandson, with his curious eyes and easy laugh. The boy who had once told me I was his favorite person in the world because I told him stories and taught him how to make paper airplanes. I replied, You can come next Saturday. I'll send the address. Just you and Matthew. And Sam, this doesn't count toward the conditions of the will. If you come, it should be because you truly want your son to know his grandmother, not for money. Understood, was his simple reply. Saturday arrived with a clear sky and crisp mountain air. I wore a simple cotton dress I had bought at the Santa Fe market, embroidered with colorful flowers. I put my hair up in a bun and wore the silver earrings the local artisans made in their family workshops. I looked in the small mirror in my room and saw a different woman from the one I had been 6 months ago. This woman had color in her cheeks from the New Mexico sun. This woman had peace in her eyes. This woman belonged to herself. I heard the car pull up in front of Doña Jacinta's house. I walked out to the patio just as Matthew came running out of the car, his small backpack bouncing on his back. "Grandma!" he shouted, with the pure joy that only children can show without filters or calculations. He ran to me and threw himself into my arms with a force that almost knocked me back. I hugged him tight, feeling my heart both expand and ache at the same time. This was real love, unconditional, with no hidden agenda. "My beautiful boy," I whispered into his hair, which smelled like apple shampoo. "How I've missed you." Sam got out of the car slowly, watching us. He looked different, thinner. He had dark circles under his eyes. The weight of guilt, I thought, is heavier than any financial debt. "Hi, Mom," he said softly, almost shyly. "Hello, Sam." I wasn't cold, but I wasn't warm either. I was neutral, observing. Matthew pulled my hand. "Grandma, Dad says you live in a really cool place. Can you show me? Do you have chickens? Can I see the mountains?" I laughed, a genuine laugh that bubbled up from some deep place that had been locked away for too long. "Come on, I'll show you everything." We spent the afternoon together. I showed Matthew Doña Jacinta's pottery studio. He tried to shape a small owl with his clumsy little hands, fascinated by how the clay transformed under his fingers. I introduced him to the women from the literacy group who stopped by. They showered him with affection, gave him sweet bizcochitos, and told him stories in their native language that he didn't understand, but which made him laugh. Sam watched us from a distance, not interrupting, allowing his son and me to reclaim what had been lost. As the sun began to set, I made hot chocolate on Doña Jacinta's wood-burning stove. The three of us sat on the patio under a bougainvillea tree that dropped fuchsia petals like natural confetti. Matthew sat between us, his steaming mug in his small hands, his lips smudged with chocolate. "Grandma, why don't you live with us?" he asked with the brutal innocence of children who don't understand adult complexities. I looked at Sam. He dropped his gaze to his mug. "Because sometimes, my love, people need space to grow. Like plants. If the plants are too crowded, they can't grow properly. They need their own space, their own light." I stroked his hair. I needed my own space to find out who I am when I'm not busy taking care of other people. "And who are you?" Matthew asked with genuine curiosity. "I'm still finding out," I answered honestly. "But so far, I'm finding out that I'm someone who likes to paint, to teach, to live slowly. Someone who is happy with just a little." Sam finally spoke. "Mom, I want you to know I'm sorry. Truly. Not just for what I tried to do, but for years of not seeing you. Of treating you like—" He stopped, searching for the right words in front of his son. "Of not treating you the way you deserve." I looked at him for a long time, searching for signs of manipulation, of falsehood. But what I saw was something different. Real shame, genuine regret. Or maybe I just wanted to see it because he was my son, and some part of me still hoped he could change. "Apologies are fine, Sam, but actions are better. If you're really sorry, show it over time, with your presence, with respect that doesn't depend on how much money you think I have." "I will," he said. "Not for the will, for Matthew, because he deserves to have a grandmother in his life, and because I need to learn how to be a better son before I can be a good father." Those words touched me in ways I didn't expect. I didn't forgive him in that moment. Real forgiveness takes time and evidence, but I opened a door, just a crack, that he could pass through if he proved he had truly changed. When they left, with Matthew blowing kisses and promising to come back soon, I stayed on the patio as the shadows grew long and the stars began to appear. Doña Jacinta came out and sat beside me in companionable silence. "Was it a good visit, Gracie?" she asked, using the affectionate diminutive.